Good morning. I want to remind you today that no difficulty, no challenge, no setback is too big for our God. Life can be tough. We all face struggles. Maybe it's a health issue, a financial burden, a broken relationship. But here's the key. You don't have to face it alone. Too often, when we go through tough times, we try to fix it all by ourselves. We stress, we worry, we try to figure everything out. But God never asked you to carry that burden alone. He said, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest." That means you don't have to do it in your own strength. When you invite God into your difficulties, everything changes. You may not see it right away, but He starts working behind the scenes. He brings peace in the storm. He gives you strength when you feel weak. He opens doors that no one can shut. Maybe today you're feeling overwhelmed. You're looking at the problem thinking, this is too much for me. That's okay, because it's not too much for God. The very thing that looks like it's holding you back could be the setup for your greatest breakthrough. I love the story of David in the Bible. When he faced Goliath, he didn't run in fear. He didn't try to fight the battle in his own strength. No, he invited God into that difficulty. He declared the battle is the Lord's. And with one small stone, he defeated a giant. What's your giant today? What problem looks too big to handle? Instead of stressing, start trusting. Instead of worrying, start worshiping. Instead of speaking defeat, start declaring victory. God, I know you are bigger than this situation. I know you are making a way where there is no way. Friend, the same God who brought David through will bring you through. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who healed the sick, who raised the dead, He is working in your life right now. So don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Invite God into that difficulty. Stand in faith. Keep believing, because your breakthrough is on the way. Life is full of ups and downs, victories and setbacks, joys and struggles. We all go through seasons where things don't go as planned, where the weight of our problems feels overwhelming, where the doors we were counting on suddenly close, where the people we trusted let us down. Maybe you're facing a financial hardship that seems impossible to overcome. Maybe it's a health issue that doctors say has no solution. Maybe it's a relationship that feels broken beyond repair. In those moments, it's easy to feel discouraged. It's easy to think, why is this happening to me? I've been doing my best. I've been working hard, trying to stay faithful, trying to do the right thing. Yet here I am facing this mountain that won't seem to move. Sometimes difficulties come unexpectedly. One phone call, one bad report, one unexpected turn, and suddenly you find yourself in the middle of a storm you never saw coming. It's okay to acknowledge that what you're going through is difficult. Faith doesn't mean pretending the problem isn't real. It doesn't mean ignoring the pain or acting like everything is fine when it's not. No, faith is recognizing that yes, this challenge is big. Yes, this season is hard, but it's also reminding yourself that it's not bigger than your God. The enemy would love for you to focus only on how bad things look. He wants you to get stuck in fear, in doubt, in self-pity. He wants you to believe the lie that this situation will never change, that this difficulty will always define you. But I want to encourage you today, what you're facing is not the end of your story. It's not meant to stop you. It's meant to grow you. It's not there to break you. It's there to build you. When you acknowledge the challenge, you're not giving in to defeat. You're positioning yourself for victory. Because when you recognize what you're up against, that's when you can invite God in. That's when you can say, God, I can't do this on my own, but I know you can. I don't see a way, but I trust that you do. This challenge may look big, but I know you are bigger. So don't let the size of your difficulty intimidate you. Don't let the weight of your struggle convince you that you're alone. The same God who brought you through in the past will bring you through again. And what may seem like a setback right now is just a setup for something greater ahead. No matter how big your challenges may seem, they are never bigger than God. He is the creator of the universe, the one who spoke the heavens and the earth into existence, the one who formed you in your mother's womb and placed every star in the sky. There is no sickness, no debt, no heartache, no loss, no obstacle that is too great for Him to handle. Sometimes when we face difficulties, we magnify them in our minds. We rehearse the problem over and over again, letting fear take root in our hearts. We look at how big the mountain is, how impossible the situation seems, how many things are working against us, and we convince ourselves that there's no way out. We start to think, this is too much for me. I'll never get through this. It's never going to change. But what we have to remember is that we're not meant to fight our battles in our own strength. God never intended for you to carry that burden alone. He never asked you to figure everything out by yourself. That's why He tells us over and over in His Word, fear not, for I am with you. He knew that life would bring difficulties. He knew there would be times when the odds seemed stacked against us. But He also knew that He is greater than anything we will ever face. Think about David when he faced Goliath. In the natural, David had no chance. He was just a shepherd boy. He didn't have the size, the armor, or the experience to go up against a trained warrior. But David understood something important. Goliath wasn't bigger than his God. He knew that if God was for him, it didn't matter how big the enemy was. And with just a small stone, David defeated a giant that an entire army had been afraid to face. Maybe today you feel like you're standing in front of your own Goliath. The problem is towering over you, making you feel small, making you feel powerless. But can I tell you, the same God who was with David is with you. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who brought down the walls of Jericho, who healed the blind and raised the dead. That same God is fighting for you. Your problems may be big, but your God is bigger. Your challenges may seem impossible, but He is the God of the impossible. He can open doors that no one can shut. He can take what was meant for harm and turn it for your good. He can bring healing where doctors say there's no hope. He can restore what was lost, provide when there seems to be no way, and strengthen you when you feel weak. So don't be discouraged by what you see. Don't let the size of your problem make you forget the size of your God. Lift up your eyes, shift your focus, and remind yourself, my God is greater. My God is stronger. My God is able. Because when you put your trust in Him, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that can stand in your way. Fear is a powerful force. It has a way of creeping into our minds, whispering worst-case scenarios, magnifying our problems, and convincing us that we are powerless. It makes mountains look bigger, storms seem stronger, and battles feel unwinnable. Fear tells us that we're not going to make it, that the situation is too far gone, that we'll never recover, never get ahead, never see the breakthrough we've been praying for. But fear is a liar. It is a tool of the enemy designed to keep us stuck, paralyzed, and unable to move forward. When we allow fear to take the driver's seat, we start making decisions based on worry instead of faith. We hold back when we should step forward. We stay silent when we should speak up. We shrink down when we should stand tall. Fear convinces us to focus on what could go wrong instead of trusting in the one who makes all things right. The good news is We don't have to live in fear. We don't have to let it control our thoughts, our actions, or our future. God has given us something stronger than fear. He has given us faith. Faith is what allows us to look at the storm and say, I know the one who calms the wind and the waves. Faith is what lets us face uncertainty and say, even when I don't see the way, I trust that God is leading me. Faith is not about ignoring reality or pretending that challenges don't exist. It's about choosing to believe that God is bigger than what we see, stronger than what we feel, and more powerful than anything trying to hold us back. Remember when Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water? As long as his eyes were on Jesus, he did the impossible. He walked on the very thing that should have taken him under. But the moment he looked at the waves, the moment he focused on the wind instead of his Savior, fear took over and he began to sink. That's exactly what fear does. It pulls us down, makes us doubt, and keeps us from experiencing the fullness of what God has for us. But the same Jesus who reached out and lifted Peter up is the same Jesus who is reaching out to you today. He is saying, don't be afraid, I've got you. Keep your eyes on me. Maybe right now, you're facing a situation that feels uncertain. Maybe the future looks unclear, and fear is telling you to expect the worst. But let me remind you, fear is not your destiny. You were made to walk in faith. You were created to live with boldness, confidence, and trust in God's plan for your life. Fear will tell you to give up, but faith will tell you to keep going. Fear will say you're alone, but faith will remind you that God is with you. Fear will make you believe the problem is permanent, but faith will declare that God is already working on your behalf. So today, make a decision to silence the voice of fear and listen to the voice of faith. Choose to believe that God is in control. Choose to trust that He is working all things together for your good. Choose to move forward even when you don't have all the answers, because when you walk by faith, you're not walking alone. You're walking hand in hand with the one who holds the universe in His hands. And with Him, there is nothing to fear. Words have incredible power. They can lift you up or tear you down, strengthen your faith or feed your fear. Too often when life gets difficult, our first reaction is to speak from a place of defeat. We say things like, I'll never get out of this mess. Things just keep getting worse. Or, I don't think I can take any more. These words might seem harmless, but they shape our perspective. They create an atmosphere of hopelessness that makes our problems feel even more overwhelming. What you speak, you start to believe. If you keep saying that nothing will change, you're already accepting defeat. If you keep declaring how tired, how broke, how unlucky you are, you're reinforcing the very reality you're hoping to escape. Scripture tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue, which means that what you say carries the weight to build or to break, to encourage or to discourage, to inspire faith or to fuel doubt. It's time to flip the script. Instead of speaking defeat, start speaking victory. You might not see the solution yet, but you can still declare, I know God is working all things together for my good. Your circumstances might look hopeless, but you can still say, I believe that God is making a way where there seems to be no way. Maybe you're facing a health challenge and the report doesn't look promising. Instead of giving in to despair, start speaking words of healing. By His stripes I am healed. God is restoring me, strengthening me, and making me whole. This isn't about denying reality or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on God's promises more than the problem. When you declare victory, you're aligning your words with what God says about you, not what your circumstances might be shouting. You're training your heart to trust God, even when you don't understand how it will all work out. Think about the story of the Israelites when they faced the walls of Jericho. God told them to march around the city, but He also told them to keep quiet until the final day. Why? Because He didn't want their words of doubt or fear to undermine what He was about to do. And on that last day, when they finally shouted a shout of praise and victory before the walls even came down, God moved and the city was theirs. That same principle applies to you. Your words can either reinforce the wall standing before you or be the very thing that causes it to fall. When you're tempted to complain, praise instead. When worry tries to steal your peace, speak God's promises aloud. Say, I am more than a conqueror. God's favor surrounds me like a shield. And this challenge is temporary, but God's goodness is forever. Maybe you've been speaking defeat for so long that it feels like a habit you can't break. But today, you can start fresh. Catch those negative thoughts before they become words. Choose to speak life, to speak hope, and to speak as though the victory has already come. It might feel awkward at first, especially if the situation looks unchanged. But as you consistently declare God's truth, your mindset will shift. Faith will rise where fear once lived. Strength will emerge where you once felt weak. And you'll start to see doors open, opportunities unfold, and God's hand moving in ways you never imagined. So don't give your problems the power of your words. Give that power to God's promises. Speak victory over your life, your family, your health, your future, because what you confess with your mouth will take root in your heart, and what takes root in your heart will shape your destiny. Waiting is never easy. We live in a world that teaches us to want everything instantly, fast results, immediate answers, quick turnarounds. When we face challenges, we naturally want God to step in and fix everything right away. But the truth is, God's timing is not like ours. He sees the full picture when we only see a tiny part. He knows what we need, when we need it, and how to bring it about in the best possible way. Maybe right now, you're in a season of waiting. You've prayed, you've believed, you've done everything you know to do, but nothing seems to be changing. The doors aren't opening. The healing hasn't come. The situation is still unresolved. It's easy in these moments to start questioning, God, where are you? Why is this taking so long? Have you forgotten about me? The delay can feel like denial, but just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream that one day he would be in a position of influence. But before he ever saw that dream come to pass, he went through years of hardship, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, wrongfully accused and thrown into prison. If you looked at his life during those years, it would have seemed like God had abandoned him. But in reality, God was preparing him. Every delay, every disappointment, every closed door was setting him up for the right moment when he would step into his destiny. When the time was right, Joseph was promoted from the prison to the palace in a single day. The same is true for you. You may not understand why things are taking so long, but God is not making you wait to frustrate you. He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. If He brought you the opportunity too soon, you wouldn't be ready for it. If He answered your prayer before the right time, it might not be the blessing you think it would be. Sometimes the waiting season is actually a season of protection. God is shielding you from things you can't see. He's refining your character, strengthening your faith, and aligning the right people and circumstances so that when the time comes, everything will fall into place perfectly. Look at Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a child, but years passed with no sign of that promise coming true. They grew impatient and took matters into their own hands, but that only led to trouble. Yet despite their doubts, God was faithful. At the appointed time, not a moment too soon or too late, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, just as God had said. His promise did not fail. It was simply fulfilled in His perfect timing. Maybe you've been waiting for a breakthrough in your finances, a relationship, your career, or your health. The delay is not a sign that God has forgotten about you. It's a sign that He is working behind the scenes. Just because you don't see anything happening doesn't mean He isn't moving. Some of the greatest miracles take time. A seed doesn't grow into a tree overnight. A diamond isn't formed in an instant. The most valuable things often require patience and process. Instead of letting frustration take over, choose to trust that God's timing is perfect. Instead of questioning why things haven't changed yet, remind yourself that He is always on time. His ways are higher than ours, and His thoughts are greater than anything we can comprehend. If you stay in faith, if you keep believing, if you continue trusting, the moment will come when suddenly everything falls into place. One day you'll look back and realize why things happened the way they did. You'll see how God's timing was always right, even when it didn't make sense at the time. So don't give up in the waiting. Don't get discouraged by delays. Keep believing, keep pressing forward, and know that at the right time, in the right way, God will bring His promises to pass. And when He does, you'll realize it was worth every moment of waiting. There are moments in life when the weight of our struggles feels unbearable. Times when it seems like no one understands what we're going through. When the pain is too deep, the road too long, and the burden too heavy. Maybe you're facing a battle that you never saw coming, a loss, a heartbreak, a disappointment that has left you feeling abandoned. It's easy in these moments to feel isolated, to believe the lie that you are facing this challenge alone. But let me remind you today, you are not alone. No matter how lonely you may feel, no matter how silent heaven may seem, God has never left your side. He sees every tear you cry. He hears every whispered prayer, and He knows the weight you carry in your heart. Even in the darkest moments when you feel like no one understands, He is right there with you, walking beside you, holding you up when you feel like you can't go on. All throughout Scripture, we see God's faithfulness to those who felt alone. Think about Moses leading a nation through the wilderness, carrying the responsibility of an entire people, feeling the pressure of every decision. There must have been times when he felt isolated, wondering if he was strong enough to keep going. But in those moments, God reminded him, I will be with you. Think about Elijah. After calling down fire from heaven, he ran into the desert, afraid and exhausted. He sat under a tree and told God, I had enough. He felt like he was the only one left standing for righteousness, completely alone in his fight. But God showed up in a gentle whisper and reminded him that he was not alone, that He had been with him all along, that there were others standing strong, and that his story wasn't over. Maybe today you're feeling like you're walking through the wilderness on your own. Maybe you're in a place where fear and uncertainty are overwhelming, where the enemy is trying to convince you that no one cares, that no one sees, that no one is standing with you. But that is not the truth. The truth is that God has never left you. He has been with you in every season, through every struggle, through every tear, through every storm. Even Jesus, in His most difficult moment on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? In His humanity, He felt alone. But the truth is, He was never truly forsaken. And because of His sacrifice, because of what He endured, we can stand with confidence today, knowing that we will never be forsaken. He took our place so that we would never have to walk alone. Not only is God with you, but He has also placed people in your life to walk this journey with you. The enemy wants to isolate you, to make you withdraw, to convince you that no one cares. But there are people who love you, people who are praying for you, people who are willing to stand with you in the battle. Sometimes we just have to be willing to reach out, to let others in, to lean on the strength of those God has placed around us. You may not understand why you're going through what you're facing right now, but one thing is certain: you are not alone. God is walking with you every step of the way. He is guiding you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what's ahead. Even in the silence, He is there. Even in the struggle, He is working. Even in the waiting, He is faithful. So don't let loneliness have the final say. Don't let the enemy convince you that you're facing this by yourself. Lift your head, open your heart, and remind yourself, God is with me. He will never leave me. I am not alone. Because no matter what comes your way, you can be confident in this: His presence will never fail you, His love will never run out, and His arms will always be there to carry you through. Worry has a way of creeping into our hearts and taking over our minds. It starts with a single thought, an uncertainty about the future, a problem that seems too big, a fear of what might happen. And before we know it, that thought grows into anxiety, doubt, and fear. We rehearse worst-case scenarios. We overanalyze. We try to figure everything out on our own, and we carry burdens we were never meant to bear. Worry steals our joy, drains our strength, and keeps us from living in peace. But here's the good news. You don't have to let worry control your life. You don't have to live in fear of what might happen or feel overwhelmed by things you can't change. Instead of allowing worry to consume you, you can make the decision to turn it into worship. Worship is a powerful weapon. It shifts our focus from our problems to the one who holds the solution. It takes our eyes off of what's wrong and places them on the one who is always right. Worry magnifies the problem, but worship magnifies God. Worry drains your faith, but worship strengthens it. Worry keeps you stuck in fear, but worship releases peace, hope, and confidence in God's promises. Think about Paul and Silas. They were thrown into prison, beaten, chained, and placed in the darkest part of the dungeon. They had every reason to worry, to complain, to question why they were in that situation, but instead of letting fear take over, they made a different choice. They began to worship in the middle of the night, in the middle of their pain, in the middle of uncertainty. They lifted their voices in praise. And as they worshiped, something incredible happened. The prison shook, the chains fell off, and the doors flung open. Their worship didn't just change their perspective, it changed their circumstances. Maybe right now you feel like you're in a prison of worry. Your mind is filled with anxiety about your finances, your health, your family, your future. You're wondering how things are going to work out, when the breakthrough will come, or if the situation will ever change. But what if, instead of letting worry weigh you down, you began to worship? What if you lifted your hands in surrender and said, God, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I trust you. What if you replaced your anxious thoughts with words of praise? Worship isn't just about singing a song on Sunday. It's a lifestyle of trust and surrender. It's choosing to say, God, you are greater than my fear. You are stronger than my struggle. You are bigger than my problem. It's declaring, even when I don't see a way, I know you are making one. Even when I don't have the answers, I know you are in control. Think about the Israelites when they stood before the Red Sea. They had an army chasing them from behind and an impossible barrier in front of them. They could have given in to worry, but instead, Moses told them, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. And as they trusted God, as they lifted their eyes in faith, He parted the sea and made a way where there was none. God has not called you to live a life of worry. He has called you to live a life of worship. The same God who delivered Paul and Silas, the same God who parted the Red Sea, the same God who has been faithful through every generation is the same God who is with you right now. And He is asking you to trust Him, to let go of your worry, and to lift your voice in praise. The next time you feel overwhelmed by fear, stop and worship. The next time anxiety tries to take over, lift your hands and surrender it to God. The next time your mind is filled with questions, fill your mouth with praise. Because when you turn worry into worship, you will see God move in ways you never imagined. Your circumstances may not change overnight, but your heart will. And as your heart changes, your faith will rise, your peace will return, and you will walk in the confidence that God is working all things together for your good. So today, make the choice. Lay down your worries. Lift up your hands and turn your fear into faith. Because when you worship instead of worry, you invite God to do what only He can do. To fight your battles, to open doors, to bring peace, and to lead you into victory. There are seasons in life when it feels like you're doing everything right. You're praying, believing, standing in faith, but nothing seems to be changing. You've been waiting for the breakthrough, for the promotion, for the healing, for the restoration, but instead, you're still facing the same challenges, still dealing with the same struggles, still waiting for something to shift. And in those moments, it's easy to feel discouraged. It's easy to start wondering, God, when is it going to happen? Have you forgotten about me? Is this situation ever going to change? But let me encourage you today. Your breakthrough is coming. Just because you don't see it yet doesn't mean God isn't working. Just because the doors haven't opened doesn't mean they never will. Sometimes the most significant breakthroughs come right after the longest seasons of waiting, right when you're about to give up. Right when you feel like you can't take another step, that's when God steps in and does the impossible. Think about the story of the Israelites when they stood before the walls of Jericho. God had promised them the victory, but He didn't give it to them instantly. Instead, He told them to march around the city for 7 days. Can you imagine how they must have felt? Walking in circles, seeing no change, hearing the enemy mocking them from behind those walls. Every day they could have been tempted to think, what's the point? Nothing is happening. This isn't working. But what they didn't realize was that with every step, something was shifting in the supernatural. With every lap, they were getting closer to their breakthrough. And on the seventh day, when they obeyed God and shouted in faith, the walls came crashing down and they walked into the victory that had been theirs all along. That same principle applies to you. Right now, you might feel like you're marching around your own Jericho. You're praying, you're believing, you're staying faithful, but nothing seems to be changing. What you don't realize is that you're closer than you think. Every prayer you've prayed, every step of faith you've taken, every tear you've cried, it's all leading to the moment when everything shifts. The walls that have been standing in your way are about to fall. The obstacles that have been blocking your path are about to move. The things that looked impossible are about to become possible. Maybe you're in a financial struggle and it feels like no matter how hard you work, you just can't get ahead. Maybe you've been believing for healing, but the symptoms haven't changed. Maybe you're praying for a relationship to be restored, but it seems like things are getting worse instead of better. Don't be discouraged by what you see, because what you see is not the full picture. God is working behind the scenes in ways you can't imagine. Look at Joseph. He had a dream that one day he would be in a position of leadership But instead of stepping into that dream right away, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. For years, it looked like his situation was getting worse instead of better. But what Joseph couldn't see in those moments was that every setback was actually a setup. Every closed door, every delay, every disappointment was leading him closer to his destiny. And in a single day, after years of waiting, Joseph went from the prison to the palace. That's how quickly things can turn around when it's God's timing. One moment it looks like nothing is happening, and the next you step into your breakthrough. One day you're struggling, and the next God opens a door that changes everything. One day you're waiting, and the next you're walking into the fulfillment of the promise. But here's the key. You have to keep going. You have to keep believing. You have to keep marching even when it doesn't make sense. The enemy will try to convince you that nothing is changing, that it's never going to happen, that you might as well give up. But that's when you need to press in even more. That's when you need to declare, I know my breakthrough is coming. I may not see it yet, but I know God is working. I may not understand the delay, but I trust that His timing is perfect. Breakthroughs often come when we least expect them, right when we feel like we can't take another step, right when we think we've reached the end of our strength. God steps in and turns everything around. And when He does, you'll look back and realize that every struggle, every delay, every disappointment was part of the journey that brought you to your blessing. So don't give up now. You've come too far to stop. Keep believing, keep praying, keep marching, because your breakthrough is coming, and when it does, it will be greater than anything you imagined. The doors that seem locked forever will open. The walls that looked unmovable will come down, and the blessings that have been stored up for you will be released at just the right time. And when that moment comes, when you finally step into your breakthrough, you'll realize that every struggle was worth it, every prayer was heard, and every step of faith brought you closer to the victory that was waiting for you all along. Life will always have its challenges. There will be moments when the weight of your struggles feels too heavy, when the road ahead seems uncertain, and when fear and doubt try to take root in your heart. But in every trial, in every difficulty, you have a choice to focus on the problem or to invite God in, to give in to fear or to stand in faith, to speak defeat or to declare victory. You're not alone in this journey. The God who created the heavens and the earth, the one who calms the storms and moves mountains, is walking with you every step of the way. He is bigger than your problems, stronger than your struggles, and faithful to fulfill every promise. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you, and He is working behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. So instead of worrying, choose to worship. Instead of focusing on the problem, focus on the promise. Instead of letting fear take over, stand firm in faith. The delays you're experiencing are not denials. God's timing is perfect, and He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. Your breakthrough is coming. The walls that have been standing in your way are about to fall. The prayers you've been praying, the tears you've been crying, the faith you've been holding on to, they have not been in vain. Keep believing, keep pressing forward, keep trusting that God is in control, because when you invite Him into your difficulties, He doesn't just help you endure them, He leads you to victory. And when that victory comes, you will look back and see that every trial was just a stepping stone to something greater. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Lift your eyes, lift your heart, and declare with confidence, God is with me, He is for me, my breakthrough is on the way. And when you do, you will walk in the peace, the strength, and the victory that has been yours all along.